Well, you gotta open it, I think.
No, we'll let them open it. Here it comes. Stand there and take it. Fight him. I'm healing you. Fight him. They're healing him. Fight him. Chase him.
I got one.
Come back. Yes! Okay, get it back up there. Heal's coming in.
I got two.
That's two.
Let's go!
We got it. Let's go! Let's fucking go!
Yes!
12 kills! Booby! Oh my God, Booby! What a game from Booby! We were waiting for the dominance and Booby brought it. Are you serious?
Well, somebody popped off.
You know, they say a picture is worth 1,000 words, but those 2 videos are worth far more than that. Welcome to episode 12 of the Player Profile series, where we sit down for a chat with Odin. Odin is a lifelong gamer, a bona fide esports shoutcaster, and a Dark and Darker fanatic. Odin is a true triple threat, meaning that he's both extremely skilled and knowledgeable, but also able to communicate that knowledge to virtually any audience. It was a true honor and privilege to have him on the program, and I hope you guys enjoy the conversation. And we're live. Hello.
What's going on, people? Howdy.
Welcome to the program. We are here for Player Profiles, episode 12, with the shoutcasting shogun himself, Odin. How's it going, man?
I like that. Shoutcasting shogun. I think I'm going to lift that, actually. That's pretty good.
How did you get into streaming? How old were you? What games were you into? Like, how did you get into that to begin with?
I've had various levels of success with streaming. I'm not the biggest fan of it, to be honest with you, which I know sounds a little strange because you sort of just equate like anyone related with video game entertainment sort of with streaming or some kind of YouTube nowadays, but it's not really something I'm really big into. I was kind of into it. I got more or less into it depending on what I was more interested in at the time. And I think that's sort of been my downfall in streaming, is that if you can't maintain an audience and like have a consistent schedule and like consistently be into the same game all the time, it's very difficult to keep people around. And then if you don't have people around, you're not chatting with anybody, and it becomes a lot less engaging for both the viewer and the streamer. The first game that I actually streamed, I couldn't even tell you. It had to have been just like some random stuff on Twitch back in the day. But the one thing that actually started getting me interested in streaming was CS:GO, because I had an actual desire to go pro in the game. And I had made this like Reddit post about how I was going to sort of document my progress and like my history, because I've had a decently decorated FPS background. I've been at a high competitive level in a couple of games, including Halo and Shootmania. But I sort of just kind of like, I don't know, I didn't really get too far with it in terms of streaming. My brain is always, when I'm gaming, I'm just like engaged with the game, and I'm not on as far as like entertainment goes. When I want to be entertaining, it's like I'm dedicated to being entertaining. I don't want to be playing a game while doing it. I want to be like,
not easy.
Yeah, I want to be like hosting something or doing shoutcasting or just generally being there to, you know, provide commentary or just be an entertainer. It's not like gaming and streaming is not something that super interests me, but it also, I don't know, I had like different times where Brawlhalla, I was at one point at my peak, I was top 50 in the world in Brawlhalla, and I wasn't streaming when I was a top 50 player. I was streaming when I was like like a little bit above average, and I was doing like new player workshops and like teaching players how to play the game and like running tournaments and stuff. And that's sort of where I really got my start with casting. Is I just decided to run a tournament for Brawlhalla for like Golden Under. I reached out to Blue Mammoth Games, the developers of the game. I asked them if they could give me a couple codes for colors, which are like the only way that you can get this particular color. So it was very sought after to give away to like, you know, top 3. I just casted the tournament, and I was like, you know what, I really enjoy this. I think I want to do this more. And then that kind of history from there.
Right on. Yeah, it's super cool. Well, I can tell you, the first time I saw you do a live cast was that that Dark and Darker tournament, and you and Nomad both did a fantastic job. I thought that was extremely well done.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, I think we should probably circle back. Maybe at the end, we'll talk about the Troubadour tournament and the group Status Effect that's doing all the production for that. They had Mason and another cat doing the shoutcasting, and maybe we'll do a little chat about that at the end. Unless you want to jump to that now, since it's a pretty natural segue.
You're the host, man. You take us along this adventure.
No,
I'm just here for the ride.
No, it's your show. I just try to do some slight steering here and there. But yeah, let's come back to it later. Let's get into some of the Dark and Darker stuff. Oh, but before we do that, we got to address the cat in the room here. So you are the first guest that has a non-Dark and Darker related image in the bottom left-hand corner. Who is this lovely psychotic feline that we have here?
Well, he was just bothering me like 10 seconds ago, but he just took off, I guess. But that's my cat, Loki. I'm sure you can imagine why I named him that. It is not because, it's sort of, I thought it was going to become self-fulfilling prophecy where if I named a cat Loki, he would end up being like extra mischievous. But he's actually really well behaved. But he's still an orange cat. He doesn't do anything like break stuff or get into any like serious trouble, but he's an orange cat, and orange cats have their reputation for a reason. He's a little crazy. He doesn't really seem to understand anything. I tell him no, and like 2 seconds later, he's trying to get in the cabinet again. It's just an orange cat stuff. But he's great. I love him. I've had him for got him in December last year, so coming up on a year, and I think he was like 4 or 5 months old when I got him. So he's a little over a year old now.
Very cool. I've never had an orange cat. I've had 3 different cats, but never one of that type. So I have no frame of reference there.
Orange tabbies and orange short hairs, which he's a short hair. Actually, I think he's a long hair. I don't know. The distinction's really weird. But this particular breed of cat that I'm sure anybody who's familiar with it sees him on the screen and goes, yeah, I know. I know what those cats are like.
Yeah. Well, how'd you get into old Dark and Darker, man? Were you one of the OGs like back in October, September, or even August of last year?
Mm-hmm.
When did you get into it?
So I wasn't in playtest 1 because I didn't even know the game existed then. Mm-hmm. But right after playtest 1 ended, Josh or Sobad reached out to me and said, like, dude, you got to try this game next time it comes around. He was telling me about it. And I remember him sending me a clip of it. And I think I had the same response that the vast majority of people who see the game had, which is this game looks fucking terrible. It's so slow and clunky. You move so slow and your weapons hit the wall and I'm like, this looks terrible. Why would I want to play this? But he just kept hyping it up. And then, September, was it September? So I think August was
the first public. September was, yeah.
Okay, so I didn't play September because September was PT1.
Yes,
and that was when he really started like saying, "Dude, you got to play this game." And then I never ended up playing it because it was like towards the end of the wipe, or towards the end of the playtest when I actually decided I was going to go try it, and I didn't end up getting around to it because I was doing other things. I can't remember what it was at the time. It might have been like Destiny or something. I don't know. But I never ended up trying it. And then finally, playtest 2 came around. And I didn't, he asked me like all week. And then like the end of the week rolled around, it was Friday. And I finally was like, all right, fine, I'll try it. Whatever. If it sucks, it's free. Who cares? I installed it. I kind of went in like already with low expectations for it because, my preconceived notion of the game was that it was slow and terrible. Right. And I picked up a fighter, because I just like sword and board classes generally. And I was like, all right, we'll just go ahead and play a quick game, see what this is all about. And this was back when they still had every room was a spawn, like a little spawn square with its own door to let you out.
Right.
And do you know the 2 side-by-side rooms that have like the little zigzag shaped tunnel that goes between them that connects them with the skeleton mages in both rooms and all the spike traps?
I love those rooms. I love them.
Yeah, great loot rooms. Even now, after they've decimated the loot. But
Right.
there was a spawn in one of those, and right outside of the door, literally right outside the door, there used to be a spider pot right next to the door.
Mhm.
New player me, I can't see, the game's dark as hell. I didn't have my
Sure.
brightness turned up. I can't see shit. I'm trying to walk out of this door, like get a feel for the game, because there's no tutorial, there's no introduction. It's just get in the game and play.
And
I walk
spiders
out of
are
the door,
feasting on your toes.
and
yeah.
I'm like crouching and smacking the spiders. I'm hitting the floor, and I'm getting hit occasionally as I'm like backpedaling. And they just keep coming. And I'm like, where the fuck are these spiders coming from? When does it end? And then there's a skeleton that's coming in. And I finally get out the door. I see the spider pot. I'm like, oh, can I break that? I go and hit it. It finally breaks. I'm like 2 health left. The skeleton hits me one time. I am hanging on by a thread. And while I'm doing that, a player runs up from behind me and kills me. And I'm like,
jeez.
this fucking game sucks. And I just turned it off. I was like, this game is terrible. And I messaged Josh. I'm like, dude, this game is ass. What are you talking about? He's like, no. Come play with me and my friends. I can't remember who he was streaming with. Just one of his IRL buddies. He's like, come play with one of me and my friends. And we'll play it together. You'll see how it is. We'll kind of guide you along. I'm like, all right, fine.
Yep.
I reinstalled it because I had uninstalled it after that. I reinstalled it. Yeah, dude. I went in one game, went fuck this game, and got out. I think there's plenty of people who have had that experience, but I reinstalled. I gave him the benefit of the doubt, and I went in and played. And literally, the very first game, he was playing a cleric, his buddy was playing a ranger, and I was on my fighter. No, I was playing a cleric too. I don't remember. One of the two. I might have had a flanged mace on fighter, but I can't remember if they had that back then. All I remember is bonking people, and it was the bridge room in the corner. The terrible spawn that has like that bridge that goes all the way on the outside, and then there's a smaller bridge that goes on the inside and it connects to the bat room. Yep. That used to be really plain. I'm sure you remember what the old maps looked like. There used to be your spawn room was literally a lever that you had to pull to crawl out of a hole. And there was another team that literally spawned right next to us. They ran over and started fighting us. Our teammate dies. Josh is behind me. Cat just cast heals. He's like, just stay in the hole and fight. Just stay in the hole and fight. I'm like, all right. Start swinging at people. Bonk, bonk, bonk. Killed one dude. He's healing me from behind. I'm like, all right, I'm going for the next dude. I turn the corner. Bonk, bonk. And he's yelling at me. He's like, no, come back. I got to heal you. You're out of the way. Come back. Get inside the hole. Bonk, bonk, bonk. The dude's hitting me. Throws another heal on me. Second guy drops dead. At this point, I'm like, I just killed 2 people and I'm feeling it. So I just run out at the next guy and just run him down and kill him. And I'm like, all right, this game's kind of cool.
That was all.
I was like, I get it. This is actually pretty fun.
Kills. Yep.
Yeah.
That'll do it.
So yeah, it was dude, that was it from there. I regret starting so late into the wipe, because if I'd had that experience a little earlier, I would have played that whole wipe. And of course, everybody who was around for the old playtests knows what that addiction felt like when you.
Oh yeah.
There was nothing like Dark and Darker, and even with the shitty knockoffs now, they're nowhere near it. But it was the only game like it, and it was the only time that you could play it. And just getting into the dungeon as a solo when people were all new, and like taking 2v1s and getting like your shitty loot as a player who has no idea what you're doing. It was pure dopamine. So I played
100%.
I played. I think all I did was sleep for like 6 hours and then play Dark and Darker until I went to sleep. Woke up, played Dark and Darker, went to sleep. Woke up, called out sick, played until the servers turned off, and then went to sleep and went to work the next day.
Damn. Yeah, man.
So
I do romanticize that time quite often. It was just an absolute blast. Like the hype leading up to it, to each one of them. And of course, all the legal drama and all that this year, not knowing if we were even going to have a game. Like I feel like so many people have short memories around all of the craziness that this game has had to endure. But yeah, so how did you evolve as a player in the game? So you said you started Sword and Board. You're a fighter guy. What did you pick up next, and what class do you like playing now?
I think like most people, I really enjoy playing kind of everything. I have to be in the mood for Ranger to play it, because it feels really boring to play sometimes. But it's sometimes fun. But I was telling you just before we got on the call here that I played some Wizard yesterday, and I've dabbled with Wizard a little bit. Wizard is probably I think most people would argue that wizard is like the highest skill expression class because it's just mechanically the most demanding, it's most difficult, which in and of itself is just really, if you're a competitive player, it feels really fun to play a class where if you pilot it really well, you see the fruits of your labor and you can like really see how you outplay the other team. So I really enjoy wizard, but I mean, fighter is like it's, you know, that's home for me. I love fighter. I liked cleric a lot. I'm getting kind of tired of cleric being literally everywhere, so by proxy I've started to enjoy the class a little bit less. But it's still a fantasy that I enjoy. I'm hoping that we get paladin sometime soon, because if paladin comes out, I'll never touch anything else. That is the class I play in every game. Yes, I am part of the majority of people. I know paladin is like literally the class that everybody plays in every game, but it's for a reason, because class is fucking sick.
Yep.
But I enjoy them all. I don't know. Rogue is actually, you know what? Rogue is really fun too. I love what they did to Rogue, where it's not this just stupid one-shot landmine anymore. It sort of could still be with enough gear, because the gear was really overtuned last patch. But I like the idea of where they're going with Rogue, where it's supposed to be more this like sort of trickster, sort of hit and run class that never really takes direct engagements unless you know it's a target that you can kill without any doubt. And I find that pretty fun. I feel like there's a lot of expression with that class as well.
Yep. Agreed. Yeah, I think there are still people, especially on Reddit, some in the Discord too, that have grievances about Rogue. And I think those people just got way too used to being able to do everything. Like, every class should not be able to do everything. And the complaint now is that rogues are too weak. And I'm sorry that the argument out there is just, it's not sound. Like, they have abilities that no one else in the game has, and the data just doesn't support it. Like, if you play for more than an hour, especially if you go to high roller, you'll see that more than half the lobbies are rogue.
Yep.
And people
I think
are doing that
you could
for a
argue.
reason.
I think you could argue that that's like maybe. The thing about the discussion of this game is that we're in an age where everything is very buzzwordy, and people love to latch on to like a specific idea, or like like someone will make a remotely good point and then everyone will just kind of parrot that point.
Yeah.
So it becomes very difficult to kind of separate the wheat from the chaff when it comes to these kinds of discussions, because you can say, well, maybe it's a design fault that a class is so terrible at PvP when they have no gear, but they can still get by fine. But maybe that's what, that's what Iron Mace wants for the class. Maybe they want them to be a class that really does their best to just completely avoid combat when they're not in gear. And because they have the tricks and tools to get around the dungeon and get access to free lockpicks and reach places that other classes can't, they can safely, amass more wealth and get into gear easier. So, I can understand the people that are frustrated that the class is really just dog shit when you're in no gear. It is miserable to actually try to kill things and fight players. A base kit cleric versus a base kit rogue. The rogue can stab you like 7 times. You just bonk him twice and he's dead. Yep. So I get that complaint, but I think
every time I do it.
Yeah, I know. But hey, you know what? The public opinion is turning on clerics. It's starting to become the most hated class now. So I wouldn't hold on to that for too long.
They need to fix not Holy Light. Why can't I think of it? Holy Strike. Holy Strike's an issue, I think. It's too easy. Too wide an area of effect.
Yeah, I agree. I think the class as a whole does too much right now, and they buffed its stats a lot. And it just feels really oppressive and necessary.
Well, they buffed the starter gear across the board for most classes, right? But like stat-wise, the cleric got a trade-off. So we got an extra agility and an extra, res, I think? An extra agility and extra resourcefulness that was traded off for a couple will. Maybe it was 2.
They used to be 5. They used to be 5 resourcefulness. I think they're 8 now, right?
Yeah, it might have been a 3-2 trade-off. I think we dropped from 30 will down to 25, and we picked up.
But they got some strength and agility too.
Did we get both strength and agility? Whatever the trade-off was, it was a 5-for-5 trade, and I think it was really necessary because clerics felt so slow, and I don't want to sound like I'm countering my earlier point. I don't want clerics to be able to do everything, but my biggest complaint has always been that like cleric has no ability whatsoever to disengage, and every other class does. I feel like rangers can just fight from range, wizards can haste or go invisible, fighters got sprint, rogues obviously can do it, bards are super fast to begin with, so they have some mechanism to disengage, but cleric, like if you don't want to fight, you're tough. You're fighting because everyone can run you down.
Yeah, well, I mean,
no
it's
spell that allows for it.
It's sort of why we've seen the prevalence of like buff balls and essentially just cleric being a battery for their team. And it creates a really difficult. It creates a really difficult balance scenario because they're the only class that can do that, especially after they nerfed bards, in combat resource generations. There is no other class that becomes a battery for their team like that. And I was seeing, I think it might have been on Ryan 6 Days a Week video that I was talking about a little earlier, where he was mentioning some of the data mine stuff and some of the information, the privileged information within the community, which we'll get to that in a minute. I think the balance on the gear is in a decent spot. I kind of wish, literally just like, ooh, shiny monkey brain. I kind of wish they would just make, the base gear, like the things that you find most often, greens. Like finding white gear is just it's just terrible. Finding white gear is just awful.
And, grays. I mean, you can still find grays, right? Like,
yeah, it doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
So I would like, and I even saw like some, before I get too off track, I would like it more if they would bring Hotfix 15. To me, I loved the gear in Hotfix 15. The vendors had blues and purples. The gear was still a little too good in the vendors, but you got enough money where if you built a little bit of a bankroll and then you lost the kit, you could probably replace most of that kit from the vendors, which made the game pace feel a little bit better for I think casuals and like people who were just really trying to run a lot of games and normals and stuff. And the stats on gear was squished essentially to where it is right now, without the restriction of stats being on only specific pieces. You could get any stat on anything. So it was closer to the balance where it is now, but everybody sort of had like, every time I ran into a team in Crips, they had greens or blues. So, and there was like often purples and stuff. So when we had these team fights, it felt really balanced. The TTK felt good. The back and forth was there. And I feel like we've gotten a little bit closer to that here, but just strictly from the income and like excitement of finding gear right now, it's not it's not quite where it needs to be. I don't know if you agree necessarily.
I do. Yeah. I think they've done some tweaks since this last hotfix, because night one, I mentioned this on the pod earlier. I thought night one, it felt the worst it's ever felt. Like I was going into HR, I was going to royal coffins, and I'm pulling whites from royals. And it's like, dude, are you kidding me? And then I'm going back to normals and things felt basically the same. Like it felt really bad, but then I think they made some shadow tweak behind the scene to where day 2, it felt a little bit better. Like not a lot, but enough to where it was like, oh, okay, I'm pulling some decent valuables, the jewelry and stuff like that is coming out, or collectibles. I don't know what the right term is for that, whatever you sell to the collector. So it started to feel a little bit better, but I can definitely agree with you on that hotfix 15, where when you had almost everybody running around with greens and blues, that also felt really good. So they just need to strike that balance. I think there's more you can do if they balance towards the lower end, because then the high end gear feels that much more rewarding. But I don't know, man. There's still a few slight tweaks, but I think now is probably it is the most balanced I've ever felt. But I would like to kind of experiment, and I don't think they'll do this at this point, because SDF is sick of making these dramatic changes. It seems like he's like,
dude, the community's sick of it too. They just don't know it. They keep saying it. They're like, we don't want all these crazy balance changes, but then 2 seconds later, everybody's like, we got to change everything. Change it again. Go back, do it again.
I know. But it would have been interesting. Oh, I bet, dude. It would have been interesting to have the role restrictions that they just implemented. It would have been interesting to have that when the green, blue, purple was really that prevalent. That might have been really, really cool. So I don't know.
I liked it. It felt like the income was in a good spot. It felt like the items that people typically use for economy, like the ingots and the gold keys, were in a decent spot as well as far as attainability for a normal player. It just felt like everything was in a really good spot. So I still think about this all the time, and I've beaten this point to death. But I felt a little crushed that they decided to undo that patch less than 48 hours. We didn't even get a chance to really sit on it, and it does make me a little concerned for how they gather data, because I feel like certain data points that didn't have enough time to sit right. But I'm not a game developer, so there's only so much input that I can give there. I'm definitely an ideas guy, but when it comes to actually getting behind the scene and taking a look at the numbers and stuff, that's not something I have a lot of experience with.
Right. Yeah. Well, out of all the classes that you're playing now, what are your favorite? You mentioned you play Wizard and you don't dabble in Ranger much. What are the, what if someone said you can only pick one to play from now on, what are you picking?
Oh, damn, that's tough. Give me Paladin, and I'll play that. Of the classes in the game right now, I would say, for team play, oh man, it's a tough choice. I'm really in love with both Fighter and Wizard right now. I think they're both just really, really fun to play. I'd have a hard time choosing between either one of them, because they both have different strengths and weaknesses that I enjoy. I think that Fighter is far more enjoyable when you have no gear and when you're in low end gear.
Oh,
and I think Wizard is,
it's no question.
And being just the spell slinging god when you're in a geared kid as a Wizard is like a feeling no other class can match. So
true.
If I'm gonna cheat, I'm gonna cheat here, and my answer is low gear Fighter, high gear Wizard.
Fair enough. All right. Well, when you play Fighter, do you do the load up on PDR style, or do you go Slayer, somewhere in between, a little bit of both?
So there's a Fighter style that exists that I don't know if it will ever be a viable option, because the longsword is kind of a meme weapon. But I like playing full plate Fighter with longsword. Not like the heaviest full plate. Like I'll do maybe Lightfoot boots, or heavy boots or something, or maybe drop the heavy gauntlets for riveted gloves, so that you're not as slow as a full PDR fighter. But I like getting to that sweet spot of right around 55 to 60% PDR, and then being a frontline fighter with crossbow longsword. It is the most fun period that you can have on a fighter, in my opinion. It's unfortunately not the most viable thing, because Fighter just doesn't really have that sticking power without sprint up, and you're really slow even if you're really trying to maximize your movement speed while keeping that PDR. And it also kind of just loses to, you can beat a Barb if you land a parry, but all he needs to do is hit you once and you fuck up your parry and you lose. So it's a really risky playstyle against Barb. It's pretty good against Cleric, I think, because Mace is incredibly easy to parry.
Yeah.
It's incredible. It's almost
all cleric weapons are easy to parry. Like when I come up against a longsword fighter, I run and then I die.
Yeah. You might as well just not even swing at the fighter. Just go for your holy spells and try to do damage to him that way. Let your teammate pelt him. But I feel like that's kind of where its strengths stop. And, it loses the full PDR fighter really hard, because longsword can't do shit against a shield. You can kind of stab at their legs, but if you go for a trade, you're just taking way more damage. Longsword has a teeny little bit more damage than Falchion does, and no armor pen. So you just kind of lose those fights. I think against a high PDR cleric, that you can also kind of lose. If they have a wizard and they ignite the cleric, it's just a GG fight. There's a lot of things that don't sort of favor it in this current meta, but I really enjoy it, and I hope that when Paladin does come out, which I'm hoping we're going to get, it has some sort of identity built around the longsword and making that more viable. Maybe it has holy damage or something. I think that Cleric sort of puts it in a weird spot where some of what you would consider to be a Paladin's class identity kind of already belongs to Cleric. Sort of that smiting aspect of it.
Right.
But we'll see. The game, has time for development. I think if they take some stuff like that away from cleric to give to a different class, people are not going to be happy about that.
No, but I think it'd be appropriate. I would hate it initially, but I would understand it, and we would adapt as long as they replace it with something decent, right?
Yeah. So speaking of
this booming blade or something.
Yeah, something like that. Speaking of, so you had one of your points here on our little talk sheet here of patch 1.
Yeah.
Sorry to peel back the curtain for everybody.
Oh no,
watching.
you're good. No, you're good.
So speaking about the changes, when they teased the original, and I don't think I've gotten a chance to talk to you about this yet, but when they teased the original skill tree, SDF mentioned that perks right now are at the strongest they are. But when the perk training comes out, they're going to be really weak, and you're going to have to get them better. And I'm just like, nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants our already limited perk selection, where most of them don't even feel that good, to go down and be worse. And then you have to work to get them back up, because the only thing that's going to happen there, if we don't also address the perk diversity, is everybody's just going to level the same perks, and the class disparity is going to be even bigger. Nobody wants that. I'm hoping that was just sort of like a spitball idea he had off the top of his head. I say shit like that all the time when I'm at work. I just have some stupid idea that comes out of my head, and I think about it 2 seconds later. I'm like, that's probably not a good idea. Never mind.
Yep.
I'm hoping he sort of had that same moment of clarity, but I had a suggestion, and I'll try to keep it condensed because it's a lot. You remember that like patch notes, the fake patch notes I sent you? Yeah, I went real big on that. Yep. I had another concept of, let's take the stats on gear, which I don't think they need to do this anymore because of how well the stat squish has gone. But then again, the gear's not that exciting, so maybe there's some room to do a little bit of both. But maybe improve the stats on gear a little bit, but degrade their performance in PvP so that you can still feel the power for PvE, but not be as effective in PvP. But my suggestion for the training system is to do it in 3 parts, and you'd basically have 3 trees. Make us go up to like level 30 instead of level 20. And 1 tree is just, you get a point every level. Some points only unlock by doing certain quests, or you have to beat certain prerequisites by going into High Roller and killing a certain type of enemy or something. But it gives you access to quality of life things, like you scavenge more potions from enemies. You get a lockpick slot in your inventory that's only for lockpicks. And cool. if you master the perk, it gives you a 40% chance to not consume lockpicks. More storage space, access to a black market where you can buy items only available on the black market, stuff like that. Quality of life, and just like interesting kind of non-combat, player power specific type of things. Yep. And then the other 2 would be, you get an alternating point each level between the 2 trees. One of them would be designed around a class identity. So, for example, let's take a cleric who can only use their holy spells on undead, and let's give them demon slaying, where they now can use their holy spells against demons as well. But in order to do that, they need to go into High Roller and kill 5 demon berserkers to unlock that perk. Obviously we want to make it something a little more, a little higher prerequisite than that, but just an example.
A good example. Yeah.
But all that stuff's really focused on PvE, unless you sort of hone in on more PvE effectiveness, things that let you sustain better, things that make killing mobs easier. The part that makes the PvP hard, get that out of the way as fast as possible, so you're not getting tagged by skeletons and stuff like that.
PvE, right.
You've invested time into making sure that your PvE is really good, and then sorry. I actually kind of confused myself there, because what I said was class identity, and then I got into the PvE thing. So what I just said, PvE tree, other tree, class identity tree being more like Slayer Fighter, except the Slayer Fighter can wear chainmail and they can specialize in spear. You're crazy good with a spear. You see a chainmail spear fighter in dungeon, you're like, that's a spear slayer. Don't go in the hallway with him. You will lose that fight. He's got a spear. That is a perfect weapon to fight in the hallway. You don't want to fight that guy. Stay out here. Those are the kinds of things that I think can really add more complexity to the classes without breaking them. You can really let people hone in on specific things. I love longsword. I know Augie loves longsword. Yeah. We would die for a tree that just makes us do cool shit with longsword. and make us more nimble with longsword. It's a 3-pound weapon in real life. I don't know why it slows me so goddamn much.
Yeah. Axel in the chat over here just said longswords should do slightly more damage and weigh slightly less. So he's on
I agree.
point. Yeah,
I could even tolerate them not doing more damage if they just gave them like 10 or 15% armor pen, because so longswords are meant to puncture armor using hand and a half by stabbing people. That was the whole point of the weapon.
Yep.
So yeah, it's got room for them to build on the fantasy if they really want to get granular with it. But that was sort of my idea, was have a quality of life tree, have a PvE tree, and then sort of a class combat identity tree, like what you really want to specialize in on your class. I think that's
great.
And what I would do,
something close to that.
That's a pipe dream. I posted that on Reddit, and I think a lot of people just kind of said no. I was like, great, thanks for the feedback. What I would love to see them do as well, and this is maybe this I think might be an unpopular opinion. I would like them to get rid of High Roller entirely.
No, that's not unpopular at all. I don't think that's I've heard lots of people say that.
Well, so where I'm going with this, I think they have plans to release some kind of ranked arena, which thank God. Just get the stupid toxic High Roller leaderboard shit out of the game, please. Everyone hates it. No one enjoys the High Roller leaderboard. I've never heard anybody say anything good about it. Anyway, I would get rid of High Roller and give us the Ruins, Crypts, Inferno, like they were going to do in the first place,
right?
And give us normal, hard, and nightmare. Normal has normal enemies. The enemies that spawn per layer vary based on the location. So, instead of having tons of skeletons in the ruins, maybe we'd have some mix of goblins, wisps, maybe a couple of skeletons, the zombies and stuff, dogs. Go more into that. Then Crypts already kind of has the appropriate enemies for the Crypts.
Mm-hmm. Then
Inferno, give us more demons. Give us more of that. Get rid of the skeletons and the zombies and that stuff, but give us more demons. And then give us that progression: normal, hard, and then nightmare. And then make the enemies that difficulty in each level. Give us all nightmare enemies in nightmare, but you got to be real geared and real leveled, and your trees got to be fleshed out for you to even handle being there, even if you're a rogue, because you just get Thanos snapped if you walk in there underpowered. So by doing that, you sort of already create this separation of power where players who are high enough to be there are going to be there because there are chase targets for them to go there. So let's say, from my example earlier, the cleric wants to get their demon slaying perk. They have to kill 5 demon berserkers. It's not 5 demon berserkers in normal. It's 5 demon berserkers in nightmare. And those motherfuckers are crazy. Right. That's scary. Adding these quests that have these prerequisites that require you to go into the higher difficulties, and you just want this progression to keep pushing you further up, naturally filters the players that don't belong in these low-level dungeons out of those dungeons, because there's no reason to be there anymore. You're not going to get any money. You're not accomplishing anything for your character. You're just there to waste your time stomping noobs at that point.
Right.
And I think a lot of people will slowly start to evolve away from that if you give them a reason to get out of there. That's a lot of stuff to add. So even if they said, Odin, this is the best idea I've ever heard, we're going to put all that shit in the game, it would still take them a really long time to put it in. But I'm not really sure what their plan for the development is for the game, but I would love to see them do something like that.
So in that scenario, with this idea, would you drop Goblin Caves altogether?
No, I like there being a solo map. I think Goblin Caves kind of sucks, to be honest with you. I don't like it. I've gotten good at it, and I've grown to like it in the sense that it's really low stakes and it's easy to just jump in and play it, even more so than the Crypts. I think Goblin Caves is harder as a new player, but once you've gotten used to Goblin Caves, it's so mindless to go into Goblin Caves. So I kind of like there being a solo option, and especially because there's mining in there. And there's decent ways to get like some low level jewelry,
but you think it should stay. So in the,
I think they should tone the difficulty down.
Really?
And
okay. But
I think
you were a proponent of dumping HR entirely, right? So in this world you've just proposed of normal and what was the middle layer? Normal, hard, and then
normal,
nightmare,
hard,
right?
nightmare. Yeah.
Normal, hard, nightmare. that would apply to a 3-tier dungeon. And for now, that would be Ruins, Crypts, and Inferno. But we know they're going to expand the number of maps that they have. So assuming that in this setup, normal, hard, nightmare, that would apply to only the 3-tier systems. What do you think about only having just a normal version for solos only, so there's only so much you can do there? Or would
I
you
like
want...
that idea.
Okay.
Because I would like for them, I honestly think, take Ruby Silver out of add a Goblin Cave, make it Cobalt only. Maybe even introduce Iron that only lets you craft like green gear. And make it a newbie dungeon. Give new players somewhere easy to go so they stop getting shit stomped. Because the amount of players that pick up this game and have that experience like I did with the spiders and just never play it again is way too high, because this game just doesn't do anything to help new players. People tell their friends, come buy this game, come play it out. I have a buddy who's really into really likes hardcore games, and I got him to play this, and he enjoyed it for like the first couple of games, but he just got so sick of it so quick because it's so hard, even with somebody experienced holding your hand. If you don't just have that magic click with you, you're not going to stick with this game. So I would love for them to just make Goblin Caves like really easy, give you barely anything from it, let you get like a full kit of white items, like just make white items just rain from the sky, just garbage that goblins collected. It's just white items as far as the eye can see, just littering the hallways. You can't walk 2 steps without tripping over white weapons. Right. Put it everywhere, and then let them mine. And just put like a couple of difficult enemies around, like some higher priority things, like some of the mines. Let players learn the game somewhere easy that no decent player would ever waste their time on, because there's just no way to make money there.
Right.
I don't think anybody's going to care about that. I know that there's a lot of people who really enjoy the solo experience of the game, and we'd probably have to come up with something a little better for them. Maybe make the Frozen map that. But I think that they balance the game around 3v3. It's clear that their intention was always for the game to be 3v3. Solos only got added because people demanded it. I don't hate solo players, and I don't want them to not have anything. But I do think that 3v3 and the game's the core philosophy and design principles and pillars should be built around that, and that the rest of the stuff should be secondary.
Yep, totally agree. And, I was thinking about your idea. My knee-jerk reaction always when anyone proposes more is, what about splitting the player base, right? But what you suggested actually makes a lot of sense, because in a perfect world, or in that system, the amount of time spent on the 3-tier map, whatever it would be, if it's a 3-tier map system, the idea is at normal difficulty, you're only going to find, much like the solo dungeons, whether it's Goblin Caves or some other new map, just like the solo experience, the normal dungeons should be a very temporary arena for most people, right? So in theory, someone would migrate, a brand new player might go to the solo dungeons, they get their white gear, and like you said, maybe they switch the type of ore so that they could craft a couple greens, and then they could go after normal dungeons. And even in normals, you're still you're going to be playing closer to the quote unquote real game, but you shouldn't be curb stomped by a bunch of people running around in purples. Certainly not best in slot purples, because those people will be long gone, and they'll only be playing hard. Like, it sounds like almost everyone, like 80% of the player base would end up in hard, because that's where it would make sense to go. And then on occasion, once you're feeling really good and playing juiced, then you're going to be going to nightmare mode. Right? Is that kind of what the way your vision works, if I'm understanding it correctly?
Essentially, yeah. I mean, if they bring back Ruins, Crypts, Infernos, I think Inferno in normal is still going to be like probably a gatekeeper for people to get into hard. I think it should be a progression where you want to go through all of these layers and really just go through it in order. And I think having Inferno still be difficult enough and rewarding enough that it's like, if you got zeroed out, you'd want to go there as a higher level player. You wouldn't start in hard because it's just too much. You'd start in normal, but you wouldn't be hanging around in Crypts and Infernos for long, or Crypts and Ruins for long. You'd be rushing for those down portals to get to Inferno and get ahead of everybody and get the gear, get out. Put a static extract so you can skip the boss. If you get there earlier than everybody else with these new static portals, then you get to go in and get your pick of the loot and then leave before, you know, the masses show up. Maybe I know they were thinking about doing this like sort of like cross matching where players would get filled in, and I think that those two ideas would conflict with each other, because how do you get people to run through dungeons really fast but then also cross match them so the layers are full every time? I don't have an answer to that question. This is one of those spitball ideas, but I think that normal Inferno should be a gatekeeper to hard, just the same way that hard Inferno should be a gatekeeper to nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
You want that progression system sort of in place where players are naturally funneled through the system to where they belong.
Yep. I like it. Speaking of the static extracts, how do you feel about them?
I love them. I actually think they're great. I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about it at first. I don't notice a huge impact on the gameplay, but I can think of, as a solo player, I would be paying attention to every single location of those if I was in solo, and especially in HR. I remember I was tuned into Katie is like one of the people that I've heard talk about static extracts the most on her streams. I tune into, you know, when I have some downtime at work, I tune into a stream or two. And Katie, like almost every time I've tuned into her stream, I've heard her talking about get rid of the circle, add static extracts. Get rid of the circle, add static extracts. Like every time I tune in. And I was like, I don't know how I'd feel about that. But then she's like, well, think about all the people that go into High Roller's Rogue, because it's the only class that can safely run through High Roller against teams of 3 and extract. Mm-hmm. Now imagine if you, I love playing fighter and High Roller solo. It was a lot of fun, but it's a gamble, because if I run into a team as a fighter, I might kill one of them, but I'm not killing all 3 of them.
Right.
It's just not going to happen unless I massively outplay them.
Same with clerics.
So
I just have to rat. Yep.
Yeah. So if I can hang out around the edges of the map and I know there's a static extract somewhere, even if I know I have to go into the zone, just like in Goblin Caves, where we know there's the stairs, if I know there's a static extract there, I'll think about it. I'll be like, okay, I'll clear. I'll make sure I have a couple beds in case I need to run. And it's always in the back of my mind now. I haven't actually had a chance to do that because I've been, you know, doing other things. But on a principle level, I actually really like the static extracts, and I hope they stay, especially if we get the manual downs between maps.
Yep, totally agree. I love everything about them. I love all those points you made, or by proxy, Katie, I guess. I love the design of them. I think the runes around the arch are super cool. I love the way that they turn off once the portal is used, so there's no question as to whether or not that's been already taken. Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, I dig it. Now, I'm with you. I don't know whether or not it's going to be good or bad when they start doing cross-pollination from other lobbies with the intent of filling up each and every level. It might be perfectly fine, but I have heard a couple good counter arguments over this has been talked about for a little while now. Let's say last 2-3 months, because it was talked about before SDF even said it in that Q&A. And one of the primary arguments was that, hey, you want to reward the players that go in and actively seek PvP to clear a lobby for the purpose of securing an objective and, you know, a lower level dungeon, right? So you're incentivized in Crypts to actually seek out combat so that you have a better shot at getting the red portals that you want, and you have less conflict when you get down there. And I think there's a valid argument there. But is that more important than all of the arguments on the other side of the equation? I don't know. I don't have an answer to that.
Take a trip back with me when they first talked about ruins, and it was before we actually got to see ruins. Like, you know, PT4, we were hearing these rumors about this new map getting added, and it was like, I remember Josh telling me, it was like, oh, there's this forest that they're talking about. It's going to be this huge map. And we thought it was going to be this forest where we were going to get really easy enemies, like, you know, like
wolves, slime
and
forest, right?
Wolves and bats and and slimes and like really simple but easy stuff. But it was going to be this huge map where a lot of teams would spawn, like, you know, maybe double what we see in a normal dungeon, maybe 30 players. And you probably would see 1 or 2 other teams in your time there. And then through naturally, those teams would get killed off and more people would filter down to the next level. And then you'd end up with about 15 to 18 players, 18 being the original number. We used to have 6 teams in Crypts. Right. You'd filter into that number naturally because the map's so big. And then Crypts, it's a little smaller, but it's still pretty big. You get the teams, a couple, maybe one or two teams make it to Inferno. I liked that idea. I have always enjoyed that idea. I don't know how much I like the idea of them doing this cross queue thing where they fill Inferno with 6 teams. That sounds miserable. Like,
do you think it would be 6 though? Because I feel like they'll try to keep the same numbers they have now. I don't think they'd fill it with more than 3 teams.
I think more than 2 teams is bad. But I also don't like the boss being dead center of the map because the teams spawn at opposite corners of each other. So you're just taking a guess at which team is going to go around and like where they're going to go, or you have to take a trip across the boss room to go fight that other team so that one of you can take on the boss. So as you mentioned, the reason that we're in the situation right now that people are very frustrated with the circle forcing everybody into one spot where there's 9 portals in one room and everybody dies there and you don't even have time to loot everything is because the players want to gatekeep so they can take their reds and be alone in Inferno and kill the boss and reap the rewards of that loot. Right. I think Inferno, I like Inferno, but it needs to evolve. I think it feels like the most antiquated part of the system that we currently have because it's so small. But if 2 or 3 teams are there, there is just no way to know where they are. It's so high risk to go looking for them, and you cannot do the boss if there's another player there.
True. And
I don't know if it fits.
There's no part of that that's good.
Part of me wants to say, yeah, it's a PvP game. Live with it. You guys got to, you got to take those risks. That's the gear churn, baby. But part of me also thinks that there should be at least some kind of like a challenge that your team takes on after you've conquered everything else. And it's not necessarily taking a risk, a 50-50 of another team being around.
Right. One of the best teams too, right? Like that is, to me, that is the most hardcore element of the game if you introduce a 3-tier dungeon, right? Like you made it past level 1, you made it past level 2, and now you've gone down to level 3, and now you're only going to run into the hardest enemies. If you want to go after the boss, that's one of the highest risk plays you can make, and you're going to run into the only other 1 or 2 teams that were crazy enough to get down here with you.
Exactly.
So, like that.
Don't get me wrong. The Inferno fights are pretty
hardcore.
fun. The Inferno fights are pretty fun. Yeah. But I almost feel like I almost feel like the boss. I had a thought. I had a thought in my head earlier today about like if they were to maintain High Roller, what if like as they got changed High Roller or something else and made it like entry ticket only, and you could, similar to Golden Keys, you could loot like some kind of rune or something that let you enter a special version of Inferno that was more difficult, but it was just your party that got to go in there.
That'd be cool.
And then you could put the bosses in there, but maybe not put the boss. I don't know. I don't know if I like the idea of putting bosses, which are the only source of uniques in the game currently, outside of a place where other players can take them. But at the same time, Inferno feels like it makes the game all about fighting in that last circle and then going Inferno.
Yep.
I personally don't like the dynamic of let's just shove everybody into one little circle and get them all killed so that one team can go down.
Yep. No, I'm with you on that. Well, it's probably time that we talk a little bit about today's craziness. So Grayson made an announcement. For those of you watching this at a later time, it will probably have already been reverted by now, or by the time we're watching this, but maybe not. We'll see. So the announcement was only made in the Discord, which was maybe the first problem that a lot of people had with this announcement. It's like, hey, if you're going to do this, maybe we should tell people in game, to which they later said they would. But in a nutshell, they said they were going to make teaming, even non-premeditated, VoIP-based teaming or non-VoIP-based teaming, illegal and a bannable offense where you only got one warning, and your first warning was a temporary ban of 14 days, and then your second, 14, and then your second, you're banned permanently. And this is a stark contrast to what they had said previously, which was that they were perfectly fine with the idea of people interacting, forming alliances to accomplish their whatever their individual goals are within a dungeon, as long as it wasn't premeditated, right? They wanted to get away from people trying to queue at the same time, especially in goblin caves. And if you're on a server that's less populated, it's relatively easy just to be on Discord together and say, okay, 1, 2, 3, go. Let's both queue at the same time, and you'll end up in the same lobby. And then you could have 2, maybe even 3 different people in the caves that are teaming together, premeditated to just wipe everybody out. Nobody wanted that. Everybody disagreed with it. Iron Mace disagreed with it. It was a great rule. Well, now they've implemented this new rule, and holy cow, the amount of pushback on this was more than anything I think I've seen ever.
Dude, you know what's funny? You know what's really funny? With the amount of times they've flip-flopped on patches and like reverted something within 2 seconds, I am blown away that they didn't immediately go, okay, oh, our bad. Okay, sorry. Go back to doing your organic teaming. It's okay.
Well, Grayson fought the fight, and he fought back more than I've ever seen him fight back in Gen Chat. They put it on slow mode for 10-minute posts, dude.
Mm-hmm.
You could post once every 10 minutes. I haven't seen that since the Hold the Line days when everybody was psychotically spamming, Spuddy's out there rallying the troops, telling everybody to post at the same time. Like, I haven't seen 10-minute slow mode in a long, long, long time. But
it's
Grayson
not a good look.
Grayson was responding, but by the end of the battle, he basically said, all right, I hear you. Maybe this wasn't the best way to go about it. I'm going to talk with the team and see if there's a better way to do it.
Yeah, when they wake up.
Yeah, when they wake up. Right. Yeah, he was up till 2 a.m. or whatever.
Which it's just, I'll never get over the idea of just like they go to bed and they wake up and there's just another fire.
Oh,
it's just another flaming dog shit on their doorstep every time.
No, dude.
Yeah, I think everybody universally understands that this is a terrible change. I don't even like VoIPing. I'm not a person that teams. Most of the time when people try to talk to me, unless I'm really in the mood to play along, I just ignore them. I will usually, if people talk to me, I usually won't fight them. But when I'm like especially in solo, if I'm in solo, I generally just don't trust people. Mm-hmm. I'm like, look, you go your way, I'll go mine. That's it. We're not doing this teaming shit.
I don't either.
Go away. Like, I'm happy to be neutral, but we're not doing this teaming. Yes. But I have teamed up every once in a while. Like, literally just the other day, I was on a basically naked fighter, and this super juiced fighter with a cape and like he had a legendary shield on, started chasing me around a corner. I ran out I see a cleric on the bridge, and I like throw the hands up at him, and I run past him, and he sees the fighter behind me, and he starts charging up a holy strike. It hits the fighter, and it's like, we can clearly see that both of us are going to die if we don't kill this guy. Right. We have to kill him. Yeah. We didn't speak a single word to each other. We just went, this guy has to die.
It's obvious, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So he lives, he gets out of the room, he found somebody else and said, dude, these guys are fucking teaming in here. They came back and killed us because I'm naked and they have the clerics like in whatever gear. I'm like, I'm looking at this guy's gear. I'm like, you motherfucker, get out of fucking normals with this gear, you piece of shit. But that kind of stuff would get you banned, and that's just ridiculous. There's you're taking away something that has built the foundation of Dark and Darker, which is this organic, emergent gameplay experience that is built upon moment to moment. It is antithetical to take that away and tell everybody that you can't do that anymore. And it's just a lazy way to deal with the Chinese RMT.
Yeah,
I'm gonna say it. Yeah. I've played many games. I don't like the idea of a region lock. It sucks for the people who are just genuine players. I don't have anything against Chinese players who want to play this game normally. That fucking sucks. But the problem is overwhelmingly because of Chinese RMTers playing on the West Coast and playing on O servers that have just completely killed the player bases in those zones. And this no more teaming thing is just a really soft-handed way to say Chinese RMT is a problem without acknowledging Chinese RMT is a problem. It's not just Chinese players. We'll make that clear as well. But I want to say something. I told you at the start of this that I came from Naraka. Naraka is a game that was made by a Chinese publisher or a Chinese developer. 24 Entertainment is Chinese. The game is still incredibly popular in China. It's a huge esport over there, and it's like 200,000 players daily in China. It's
holy cow.
Yeah, it's like 5,000 players on a good night in North America for a game that had a $100,000 launch tourney with huge production that I was casting. We were out in the studio in Irvine every month doing these huge, big broadcast events with like I forget the name of it, the crane camera and the Gib. Just like this $100,000 camera on a $100,000 tournament doing all these huge productions. They clearly had intentions for the game to be huge in America, and it was when it first came out. But I'll tell you what happened. There was a Chinese Discord of players that would team, and it's a battle royale, big, huge open map. They would sell carries, they would boost the counts, they would team in games, they would cheat in tournaments, and and they were laggy as all hell, which made fighting them really unfun. Because it was really just RNG whether you would win or lose, and they were in every lobby, and they knew what they were doing, and it destroyed the game. It got a little resurgent when it went free to play, no surprise there, but the game went from like millions of players to nothing overnight because the devs didn't do anything about this problem. They just let it go, and they knew about the Discord. They had community members in the Discord in like being secret agents for them, like spying on this Discord and reporting everything back. And they just didn't take appropriate action. And my biggest fear for Dark and Darker is not that they're going to fuck up the balance and piss people off. It's that they're not going to address this problem that is actively destroying the community and is like sort of the root of the evil. They just haven't done anywhere near enough about it, in my opinion. Even if they're not going to region lock China, not having somebody sitting in chat all day watching RMTs getting posted and banning every single one of them like on the spot is just unforgivable.
That's a huge miss. Yeah, that's a huge miss that they've allowed that, I think, to go on for because it's so easy to address. Like simple code can pick out those kind of posts. And I've only made like one suggestion since they moved over to the website. Obviously they used to have the suggestions on Discord. So since it went to the website, the one suggestion I put up there was to basically, it was all around trade. And one of the aspects of it was limiting spam and RMT related posts by just take the free text option out. It's not adding that much. Give people option sets, take that out. Like that wouldn't be hard in and of itself. But even if you don't want to do that, maybe there's someone at Iron Mace that's like, no, people need to have the freedom to type whatever the hell they want, except it can't have .com in it. Like there are so many different string identification things they can be doing.
Yeah.
Or just simply take the community feedback. Like, I don't know about you, but the second I see one of those, I block. Yeah. And I've heard multiple people say they've already hit their block cap. They can't block more than like 50 people. I haven't got that high yet.
I don't think so, because I have like at least 80 people blocked.
Oh, really? Maybe they took it off because someone was saying that a while back. But yeah, so I'm with you, man. But I do have a question for you. So I know you work in IT. I work in data, which is still a subsection of IT, but networking is not my strongest suit. Would they not, if you region lock China, all IPs coming out of China, can they not still simply VPN?
Yeah, they can.
Okay.
There's certain things. So there's certain things that you can do to, in addition to regional locking. So first of all, the main solution isn't to have a single thing that just automatically fixes it, because that doesn't exist.
Right. There's no silver bullet. Yeah.
Right. The idea is to make it as prohibitively difficult as possible so that the profit incentive goes away. So the reason that they're doing this is because they're making enough money for it to be worth their time. No matter how many of their accounts do get banned, they're still making enough money that they could buy new accounts, and their time is being spent well enough that they are making a profit that matters to them. That is the only reason.
Getting chased by a lion metaphor, right? You don't have to be faster than the lion. You just have to be faster than the slowest human that's with you.
Right.
So same thing. We want them to go to a different game at this point. We're not going to stop them. We just want them to go somewhere where it's easier.
Yeah. And VPN helps with that, because VPNs are illegal in China. Well, VPNs are illegal in China. You cannot have a VPN in China. Okay, obviously, that hasn't stopped people.
Right, but it ups their risk.
Right.
Yeah.
So you add another risk. You put ping lock on servers so that if they exceed a certain ping, their connection just drops and they can't do it. You change the way the server architecture reads the player packets so that they can't just DDoS servers when they lose and reset the server to get all their gear back. You force them to have like SMS connected to their accounts in order to play. That's maybe a little out of scope for Iron Mace's resources at the moment. But there's just so many things that they could be doing that they aren't. And I think that's the thing that frustrates a lot of the player base the most, is that the people who have experienced it and fallen victim to it are so just utterly frustrated by the lack of action and the fact that Iron Mace just hasn't said anything. They have not been like, we recognize that there's an RMT problem with our game and we're doing things to address it. They just nothing.
Yeah. And it does kind of suck because from the get-go, one of the big appeals, I think, for a lot of people, aside from their mission statement saying we're sick of the greedy practices, one of the other things was their really firm stance on cheating, right? And I think they've done a fairly good job to try and address cheats and hacks that have come out. I don't experience a lot of cheaters. And that seems to be the sentiment across the board. Now, I know at one point, for people that only played HR, they had a slightly different opinion, but I think we can say non-confrontationally, they've done a better than average job for a dev team their size, for a game still this early in its development, of addressing that problem. And it seems like they're intentional about it. But when it comes to
my experience playing the game, I have died to 2 blatant cheaters in all of my time playing this game, which is well over 1,000 hours at this point.
Yeah, that's pretty damn good. That's not prohibitive. That's not something that's going to make you quit the game. No.
Cheaters are literally the last thing I'm worried about with this game.
Yeah.
Which is amazing to say after.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome to be able to say that.
After many years of being a competitive FPS player, the reason I don't play competitive FPSs anymore is because they are littered with cheats, and there is no assurance that I will play a game and somebody's not cheating. And just that thought alone makes me not want to play. Yep.
So getting just to kind of close the loose end on teaming RMT in general. For RMT, you know, I've been a defender because we talked a lot on the pod about a number of different issues. And I said, listen, guys, like for a dev team their size, and you know this from working in IT, if you've got 100 tickets in front of you or 100 story cards or tasks, whatever your level of work is, and you choose 5 to work on that week, the other 95 go undone. You've always got someone pointing at the board saying, why didn't you do that one instead? Right. But I think there is still, in spite of that, I think there's a strong argument to make right now, especially after what happened today, to say out of all the things that you have to play whack-a-mole with, this should be at the top of your list, figuring this out. If you're willing to go to these extremes to like change one of the core, let's call it a tenant or interactive features of the game that many people liked, if you're willing to do that just because you're not acknowledging this RMT problem, especially when it's coming from one region, and I don't know if that's what got a bad taste in their mouth. I mean, this could be a very deep rabbit hole, right? Like maybe a bunch of their investors are from China. We don't even know, but we do know that their stance has been very, very hardcore on basically censoring people from talking about it. Like they have said, do not talk about any RMT or RMB related stuff coming from a specific place because it's discriminatory.
I get why, and like there's an argument to be made that's saying ban China is xenophobic because in a small sense it is, and a lot of players that just say that and parrot that rhetoric are probably being a little xenophobic, for being honest. But there is merit to it, and there are statistics that we can track, and we know that Iron Mace sees those statistics.
Data is the data,
because they've had to speak up and tell people to be like, guys, come on, you can't just openly out loud say ban China. You can't do that. Right. I think the approach has been, I'm not going to call it authoritarian because it's not what it is, but it's been, they could have handled this a lot better. And they're not the only company to be in this situation. If you ask players, I didn't play the Cycle or the Frontier or any of those games, but I've heard the same.
Oh God, the Cycle was.
I've heard the same story.
The cheaters more so than RMT.
Yeah, but I've heard the same story from other games that have just gotten crushed under the weight of this problem, that the devs did not handle it well at all, and they would ban people for even bringing up the subject. And I get the principle of don't bring it up. If we don't talk about it, the problem will diminish, at least because you're not giving it attention, but that's not how this works. No. That is not how this works.
Right.
the profit incentive is the only thing that works. And I saw somebody in your chat mention ban the people that are buying, and I 100% agree with that because
absolutely.
That was one of the major ways that Blizzard used to combat RMT, and it didn't fix it, but it definitely helped. People got banned for buying gold. You got to ban these people. It doesn't matter if they bought your game. First of all, you already have their money. Fuck them. Second of all, if they're actively doing something to destroy the community of your game, they broke a TOS and they don't belong in the community. End of story. It's black and white. This is not a gray matter, a gray area.
I agree, dude.
So
I agree.
So I'm being a little harsh on Iron Mace because, like many others who are fiercely adamant about their opinions on this, I love the game and I only want to see good things happen. But there is a certain point where they gotta just be like, okay, our bad. You guys are right. We're going to take this issue more seriously. And I'm afraid that they're not going to do it. That's my one doom point. I think everything else about the game can be fixed or addressed in the future. I'm only scared that they won't deal with this one problem effectively.
Fair enough. Yeah, I hope they do, man. And even if that's just like, I don't feel like you need to region lock everyone out of the game, because I agree. Like, I don't want, I'm sure there are plenty of legitimate players that live in China that would like to play and not be banned from playing the game because of all these bad actors.
Yeah.
So why not make a regional server for China and keep everyone there?
Don't they have
that help? Does that help it?
I thought they had one.
But it's not locked to that, right? Like, I don't think there is one. For
like
China
I said before, the region lock, I think it's Southeast Asia, probably Singapore. Yeah. Which is, I think it might not be super playable for people in like West China, but I think it's probably good for most of the players.
Okay.
I might be wrong on that. I'm not educated on that, so I'm not gonna speak. But like I said before, VPN isn't a it's not Flex Seal. It's not, you don't just slap it on the problem and it goes away.
Right.
There's more to it than that. But there's like a list of things that they could do. And they're not doing any of them. If they could just do some of them, that would be okay. If we could just see some effort, but this like totalitarian, no more teaming, fun has been banned, is just ridiculous. And I'm glad that Grayson at least was able to go, okay, look, I tried to argue my position. The community is clearly not in favor of this. We're gonna have to walk this back or figure something else out. It's just good. But now let's actually deal with the RMT, please.
Yep. All right. I think we beat the dead horse.
Yeah, I think we have.
How are you feeling about we touched on the Troubadour tournament earlier, and I want to talk a little bit about what you think about not only the production quality, like Status Effect, in my opinion, has done a pretty good job. Like, I really liked a lot of the art they had done. So tell me what your thoughts are on both that and then the nature of the tournament itself. One being only Troubadour, two, kind of how they held the preliminaries and how they're doing the semis, and then how they're going to handle the finals, which is coming up November 10th.
So production, first of all, was amazing. The intro video, I actually showed it to my friend who doesn't play the game, and he was like, wow, this is awesome. I was like, yeah, it's for Dark and Darker. He's like, wait, really? Like, I thought this was like some YouTube video thing. I'm like, no, this is just the intro that they made for this tournament. It's pretty awesome. The overlay was like simple but sweet. It got the point across. It was pretty good. The casters, I don't think they were as knowledgeable as I would like a caster to be about the game, but they did a good job for their level of expertise. I think they were good casters. That's pretty, like, I don't have any anything negative to say about Status Effect. I think they did a great job with it. I think they did the best with what they were handed, which is where my praise stops. Because why are we running tournaments in a public lobby when we had private lobbies in one of the playtests? Iron Mace, come on. What are we doing here? Why are we setting forth the best players in the game with the best gear in the game amongst the Timmies? What is this? Amongst one of the most heated times of discussion of this game is incredibly new player unfriendly. They're like, yes, it is. Now go forth and murder them some more, please. Go forth and kill. it sort of highlighted and exacerbated an issue, which is that and I've sort of alluded to the fact that I really don't like that there's privileged information within the community. Like I get them having favors or having favorites and like wanting to talk to certain players more, but there's this overwhelming feeling from the community, whether it's true or not, and I do think it is true to some degree, that they cater too much to the streamers. And the problem with that is that the tournament highlights the issue that the streamers do not play the same video game as the regular player. Even hardcore players that play this game all the time are not playing the same game as streamers because they don't have people in their chat to take items from them and trade them. They don't have fences that sell things for them. They don't have people donating gear to them at all times. They don't have people who know who they are and then kill them in goblin caves and give them back their gear or sell it to them super cheap. They are just not playing the same game. They have access to things that players do not have access to because we don't have, now we have 3,000 gold for an extra storage, but that's prohibitively expensive for a lot of players. We still have to sit through this dog shit trade system that I cannot stand, personal opinion. There's no account bound storage, even if it's just a little tiny window for you to trade things between characters a little bit at a time, even if it costs a little bit of money. There's just all these things that streamers have access to, and their opinions of how the game should work is just vastly different from the majority of players because they don't experience it the same way. So you have this sort of in my opinion, somewhat of a recipe for disaster. I don't think all the streamers are idiots. A lot of them are very good players, and I know quite a few of them, and I'm friends with some of them. They're good players. A lot of them have good ideas, and their intentions are good for the game. But because you've got this environment where the tournaments are only for the content creators, and most of the information that gets sent to the community is not from Iron Mace, it's from the content creators. It's passed down, but some of it's hearsay. Some of it's coming from parties that we don't know if the information's correct. Some of it's there's even another level of privileged information that's only given to the veteran discords, and like it feels like they're separating their player base too much inorganically and creating this like us versus them mentality. And you see that reflected in the discussions that happen in Gen Chat and in the Discord, which are really the two biggest places for people to have discussions about the game. They go, fucking streamers, man, they're ruining the game because they're telling the devs this, and the devs just cave and give in to them on a whim. And like I said before, I do think that it happens to some degree. I think it's way overblown the way that Gen Chat paints the picture. But I do think that their data is a little bit skewed because they're getting nuggets. They're getting this painting of a game that only exists for 0.01% of the player base.
Right. No, it's a fair take. Very, very fair take. I have nothing to add to that. Well said.
Really, nothing.
No, that's extremely well said. I hope SDF will stick with his gut a little bit more than, I want him to use the data. Obviously, I'm a data guy. I like data-driven decisions, but I also want him to stick with his gut a little bit on some of these things. And I think if they stray too much, and one of the criticisms I've seen, and I think in a roundabout way you've kind of echoed this sentiment, is that they have sacrificed some of their original vision just for community feedback, and a very weighty part of that community feedback seems to be coming from a limited audience. So I definitely know you're 100% right about the perception. Being on the Reddit for any amount of time or the Gen Chat, like, people absolutely believe that the streamers are running this game for good
Spud
or
Hunter
for bad.
Works for Iron Mace, and
for
he's
sure.
ruining the game.
Oh yeah, and he jokes about it all the time. Like he and One Peg and the rest of them joke about it all the time. Like, as the lead developer, I say this is the way it's going to go, and it's funny, but there are nuggets of truth to like the actions and moves that Iron Mace has made, just that line up in the timeline with the way that the streamer narrative has been. It's too coincidental, right? Like,
there was something said by to your point of Iron Mace sticking to their vision. Think about the fact that playtest 2 is like the most beloved time for Dark and Darker. Now
3 was for me. I love 3.
Playtest 2, Playtest 3, they were basically they felt very similar, and they were really the best times of the game. Now, rose tinted glasses a little bit on that because the game was new in a genre that's new, in the only game that delivered this kind of thing,
baby. Yeah, it was honeymoon phase. Yeah,
so
absolutely.
But at the same time, it was, the game had to get its hooks into you for you to actually like start playing it and enjoy. Because I had that one experience, it sucked, and then I got it, and then I was about ready to give up, but then I had fun with it and all, and then I was just hooked. That wouldn't have happened if the game was actually just garbage. So the original vision that they had for the game was arguably the best the game has been, and it's been sort of, like you said, there's some nuggets of truth to the fact that the vision has been filtered and tampered with a little bit because of their over their over accentuation on feedback from the community. I think, they should hear feedback from players.
Sure.
But
Yeah, it's a balancing act. Yeah, for sure.
take it their way. There's a saying. I know we're coming close to when we wanted to wrap up. And I need to get
one more
water,
thing I
use the
want to.
bathroom and
Yeah,
stuff.
I got one more
But
thing we want to. But yeah, go ahead. and make
There
that
was a
point.
saying. There was a saying. I just wanted to say this before we moved on to the next point. But there's a saying in the community, in the gaming industry, and I can't remember who said this. But somebody said that players are very good at identifying problems. They're not that good at coming up with solutions for those problems. The thing is, when you have so many people who are so vocal, they can identify what they know to be a problem, but they can't really pick apart what the root issue of that problem is and how to fix it. They can throw a bunch of stuff at the wall and see what sticks, but because they don't have the dev tools and the data right in front of them, they are basically just making barely educated guesses based on their opinions and feelings. Right. So I think Iron Mace needs to come in a little bit. We're hearing a lot of yelling. There's a lot of people, a lot of opinions. And that's fine. Let people talk about the game. It builds discussion. It builds traction around the game. And it's totally fine for everybody to have ideas, even if their ideas are just terrible. Just let them have their ideas. It's fine. It's good to have discussion and be creative.
Right.
But let's trust ourselves a little bit here. We made a good game to start with, and it's been rocky since then. Let's go back to what we were doing before.
All right, so perfect segue into the future. You mentioned Ryan's 6 days a week video earlier. I only got halfway through it, and then I got pulled into something else. So he talks a lot about the roadmap, I gathered from what you mentioned earlier, like what's coming in this next patch, what's coming in the not too distant future for us. What are you most excited about from that you gleaned from either that video or from any other source? Could have been the Q&A. What are you most excited about for the future?
Overall, I'm just really excited for an injection of new content in the game so that, we just have something new. But we've basically already been more or less have been giving confirmation that there is a metric fuck ton coming with this patch. There's the Druid class, there's a new map, there's a ranked arena coming, which I know I've heard a lot of people be kind of disparaging about that idea, but I love the idea of just let's keep the organic PvP in the PvE PvP PvEVP map, keep it as organic and as just emergent as possible to really preserve that feeling of Dark and Darker, and then create an arena for the biggest of the biggest and the best of the best to slug it out, and people to actually go find a place with even footing to prove themselves. I love that idea. That might be the thing I'm the most excited about, just because I think it's so good for the health of the game to separate those two things a little bit, that it'll also give them a chance to kind of pull the lens back and take a wider look at the balance of the game after they've injected all that content. But skill trees are something that are really exciting to me. The fact that we're finally getting the questing system, because they've already confirmed that the new storage system's coming with the questing system, is really excited. There's some potential mention of new mechanics coming to the game, like things like we already saw it with Blow of Corruption for Warlock, but some sort of heal reduction, which could directly impact the power of the Cleric Battery, being able to reduce the amount of healing that they're applying to players. Mechanics new mechanics like that, damage over time, heal over time stuff coming with the Druid, transformations. The thing I'm the most excited about, that may be somewhat conjecture but also somewhat proven, is the potential of new types of unique gear that aren't specifically the artifact level, but are just I got the Hauberk of Power it's guaranteed to drop with 2 strength, 6 health, and an implicit 5% armor pen, and it's a male chest that fighters can wear. That's a fucking cool drop, and it's always going to be worth the same amount of money because we know how much it's worth because it drops the same way every time. That is such a cool item to find when you're in a dungeon. You're so psyched about that because even if it's not for you, you know you're going to get some money for it. You know you're going to get some money. It's not this, I'm going to sit and trade for 20 minutes and maybe sell it for 200 gold. That kind of stuff. But adding more exciting gear that does things that aren't explicitly you one-shot somebody, but 5% heal off of if you kill them up on these gloves that you got. Stuff like that. But the other thing that I heard about that potentially I think is maybe the most exciting is if they want to shift the loot away from being all this crazy shit popping out of every chest all the time, putting a lot of resources that you find in the dungeon that let you craft gear from green all the way up to purple to legendary or whatever, letting you actually have a much wider selection of things that you can craft and deterministically go after by obtaining resources from the dungeon instead of just having to go, well, I found 600 chest plates and only one of them's good.
Right.
That is, to me, I think, so exciting to think that potentially could come. I hope they're honing in on that.
Me too, man. Amen to all of that. Because I do like the crafting system that they've got now, but it needs so much more. I feel like so many of those pieces are hyper dependent on RNG that no average player is ever going to get. Like the troll pelt being a key ingredient in so many items, and like just there's always, to me, at least, let's say on a spitball number, 75% of the crafted items have at least one component that is very difficult to obtain. Very difficult to obtain.
I'd agree with that.
And for the average player to go in and like your sole objective would have to be to go find that item, and you would need hours sometimes. And if it's something that has a troll pelt in it, good luck. Like you might need 50 raids to get that or more. Like the drop rate is not that good. And not die, right? And get out with it to craft that item. And it's like, okay, dude, like that, if you want those items to be that difficult to obtain, they shouldn't be crafted items to begin with. They should just be a normal, unique or legendary that's just an RNG drop from a boss kill.
Dude, I'd be fine with a troll pelt selling for 1,000 gold. That'd be sick. Imagine if you could just sell a troll pelt to a vendor and it sells for 1,000 gold. You don't need it to craft your item that you're after, but you could just get this drop. It's like, oh my god, I got a fucking troll pelt. Yes, I just go vendor this for 1,000 gold right now.
Oh, you mean, yeah, okay, it's to a vendor. All right, I was going to say, you can definitely sell it for 1,000 gold. And
you can sell it for a lot more than 1,000 gold.
You'll get that for sure.
It's worth 1,000 gold the second the wipe starts.
Right, no doubt. No doubt. Nothing else is worth a damn thing. I couldn't sell a +3. What did I get? I got a green spear with +3 weapon damage, which is max roll. I tried to sell it for 100. Nope. Tried to sell it for 50. Nope. No one's buying it. Like, are you kidding me? Beginning of the wipe. No, everyone's broke.
Yeah.
And
my biggest wish is to get an auction house. Personally, I know I know that's a pretty divisive topic. I think a lot, like half the community loves the idea that half is like, but then trade's gonna go away, and I'm like, well, I don't really care. Give me an auction house, please. I want to play the game. I don't want to sit in trade chat. If you really want to have it, make trade free, and then just let people have their trade Discord. That's fine. I don't want to deal with that. I just want to buy things from an auction house. I want to sell things on an auction house. If I have some big ticket item, then I can go for the trade. That's fine.
Yep.
But damn.
I'd be down for that for sure. Well, man, I have a feeling we could keep this up for another hour and a half easy, but I do think we should call it for today, and we'll have to do one in the future, maybe when we get on Steam, or maybe content patch number 5, something like that. I don't know. Or
it's okay. We can just add another. We'll just add another podcast up to the lineup. We'll just give, that's all people want. They just want more podcasts. Give me stuff to listen to at work.
Yeah, no doubt, man. But it has been an absolute pleasure, as I suspected, sir. Where can the people find you? I know you don't stream a lot, and you haven't been producing a ton of content on YouTube, but for your rare cameo appearances, where can the people find you?
I am at Odincasts on everything. I think my handle on YouTube is still at Pandora Ronin, because I made that when I was 13, literally the day YouTube came out. Nice. My account is literally YouTube old. But yeah, it's just to add Odin cast on everything. I don't really have any big grandiose plans to do any big streams or events or anything, but I'm always down to do podcasts and stuff with the community. This was a pleasure. I'm glad you had me on here because it's been fun chatting with you. But I'm down to do podcasts. I'm always down to do casting for the game. I'm always down to get involved with things. I'm just not much of a streamer creator myself. I just like to be on stuff.
Yep. I hear you, man. You and I are very kindred spirits in that regard.
It's a lot of work doing all this shit, right? I got a full-time job.
It is. And I feel you. Well, thanks again. Thanks everybody in the chat for contributing, asking questions, giving recommendations and comments. Much appreciated, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, hold the line. We'll see you guys.
See ya.